On today's adventure, we're in Petros, Tennessee to explore the notorious abandoned Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary. This correction institution initially opened in the late 1800s and was later rebuilt in the 1920s, each time utilizing labor from the inmates who would soon come to inhabit it. From its beginning, Brushy housed the absolute worst of humanity and over time earned its reputation as one of the harshest and most unforgiving prisons in the United States. The prison's complete isolation, towering stone walls, and mountainous landscape that surrounded the area made escape nearly impossible, and for the men sent here, Brushy Mountain was more than a sentence. In many ways, this prison was truly the end of the line. To fully understand the origins of Brushy Mountain, we have to go back to the mid to late 19th century before its prison walls were ever built. In the aftermath of the American Civil War, southern states like Tennessee were left in absolute financial ruin, which led to the implementation of a convict leasing system. While the system varied across the region, in Tennessee's case, prisoners were leased to private companies to work in coal mines. While this generated income for the state, it came at a human cost. Hundreds of free miners lost their jobs, wages were driven down, and convict labor grew to mere slavery in its exploitation. Eventually, tensions between miners and the state erupted in 1891, culminating in one of the largest labor rebellions in Southern history, the Coal Creek War. This uprising began at Briceville Mine, where free miners resisted their replacement by freeing prisoners, burning mine stockades, and sending prison guards and inmates alike on a train out of town. So then for the following year, free miners raided prison camps and mines across the state while also battling head-to-head against the state's militia. Though eventually suppressed, the miners' rebellion led to the abolition of convict leasing in 1896 and in return set the stage for Tennessee to go into the coal mining industry for itself, as the state then decided it needed its own coal mine to hold prisoners and force them to mine the coal below. And this is where Brushy Mountain's story truly begins. In 1896, prisoners themselves laid the tracks leading to the site, built the initial 4-story wooden prison building, and then were put to work underground, often at the cost of their life. The work underground was brutal, and mining accidents were common. Methane pockets in coal exploded without warning, tunnels collapsed, and the air underground was completely toxic to their lungs. While Brushy never had a death row, the mines were very regularly a death sentence, and those who refused to work were whipped, beaten, and tortured by guards until they complied. By the 1930s, the prison was rebuilt as a massive stone fortress using sandstone harvested on site and was designed to resemble a cross as an attempt of conformity. While its structure symbolized redemption, there wasn't much anything holy within these prison walls. Surrounded by massive stone walls and nothing but the Appalachian Mountains, Brushy was deemed the Alcatraz of the South and proved to be inescapable. The mountains surrounding the facility acted as a natural barrier, leaving only one way in or out, on a single road through the narrow valley and into the town of Petros. Even after the state closed the prison's coal mine, life inside Brushy was absolutely relentless and has been described as one of the most violent places known to man. Some of the worst of humanity was imprisoned within these walls, including numerous serial killers and most notably the assassin of Martin Luther King Jr., James Earl Ray. In his time at Brushy, Ray attempted multiple escapes. However, in 1977, one of his attempts was finally a success. Ray and 6 other inmates scaled these very walls using a makeshift pipe ladder and then vanished into the wilderness behind it. For 2.5 days, the FBI scoured these mountains with helicopters and bloodhounds until they eventually found him, exhausted and hiding about 8 miles from the prison. In the aftermath, Ray would remain at Brushy for the next several years, leaving his name forever tied to the prison's dark past. Then, in 1981, he was attacked by fellow inmates and stabbed 22 times in the face, chest, and arms. Miraculously, he survived. However, he was sent to Nashville after the incident and would spend the remainder of his life bouncing to and from Nashville and Brushy. Even after Ray's departure, the violence inside Brushy's walls only worsened, and through the 80s and 90s, riots, stabbings, and corruption were a constant reality. In one 1982 incident, guards were held hostage by 7 white inmates who proceeded to shoot and kill multiple black inmates while they were locked in their own cells. In its time, Brushy had long earned its prestige as one of the most dangerous and unforgiving prisons in the country, a place where survival was never guaranteed and was rather unlikely. However, after more than a century of brutality, misery, and overall inhumanity, the Tennessee Department of Corrections finally shut the facility down in 2009, and for the first time since the 1800s, these stone walls fell silent. Now join us as we step into the eerie remains of what once was one of the most notorious and unforgiving prisons in Southern American history. Back in 1932, a group of former inmates published a series of articles exposing the horrific conditions inside the original prison, a place so overcrowded and disease-infested that prisoners stole food and blankets from each other just to make it through the night, only to be forced back into the mines at sunrise. Then when the facility was inspected, the state's new commissioner deemed Brushy as one of the worst things in the state of Tennessee, ultimately pushing the state to completely redevelop the prison throughout the 1930s, replacing the old wooden structure with the massive stone fortress that still stands today. Constructed from sandstone quarried directly from the mountain behind it, and utilizing the labor of the very inmates who would eventually come to inhabit it, this building once served as Brushy's main cell house. This structure was designed in the shape of a cross, and the front arms of this cross were once the prison's 4 main cell block wings, each 3 stories high and exact mirror copies of one another. Then the north side and bottom of this cross contained the cafeteria, kitchen, visitation, and holding cells. We're going to start by checking out the main level of this cell house, beginning with the 2 wings on the building's east side. Initially, the upper levels of Brushy's blocks didn't have these floor-to-ceiling caged walls. However, in one incident, an inmate was stabbed in the neck and thrown over the railing, where he would then land on 2 guards standing at the ground level below. And in the aftermath of this, these cage walls were added to each of the blocks to prevent incidents like this from occurring in the prison's future. This one cell has over 1,000 tally marks drawn on its wall, which would have been over 3 years of an inmate counting his days. Right now we're heading over to the cell blocks on the west side of the building, which we're going to walk through a little bit more quickly since they're both essentially mirror images of the one we just checked out. Additionally, this area seemed to be the main talking points of the guided tour, and it was a bit difficult to get time to yourself in. Right now we're heading to the second level of these cell blocks, and through most of its history, prisoners at Brushy were separated based on skin color, so for the majority of the time it's likely that the cells on the first level would have housed white inmates, as these cells up here would have housed black inmates. At the center of these blocks, on the second level of this building, sits the prison's former visitation area. Brushy never allowed conjugal visits, but this space accommodated for regular, hourly visits and even held a separate enclosed area for inmates restricted from having any contact. Beyond its role in visitation, this room also hosted Brushy's first inmate education program, providing a classroom setting where selected prisoners could participate in literacy and basic education courses. Right here is one of the most notoriously violent spots within Brushy Mountain's walls, the prison's cafeteria. Tensions between black and white inmates were often so high that they ate completely separate from each other, but that didn't stop fights from breaking out. Violence was extremely common here, and murder was oftentimes a part of it. To try and make the place feel a little less hostile, the warden allowed inmates who were interested in art to paint animal murals all throughout the cafeteria's walls. While this occurred, inmates were given time after dinner hours to clean, sketch, and paint their designs purely by memory. While this didn't resolve the violence within the cafeteria, it did give the room a much brighter look, and it also gave the inmates something constructive to do in the meantime. While separate from the cafeteria, the prison's kitchen held an equally violent reputation. In one incident, 2 inmates running the kitchen murdered and dismembered their co-worker using a meat cleaver and a kitchen knife. Additionally, the kitchen is also the site of one of the prison's lesser-known escape attempts. In 1970, an inmate with the help of his kitchen co-workers hid inside 2 18-by-9-inch boxes taped together and labeled as 153 pounds of roast beef. The package was then loaded onto a delivery truck, and once the truck reached the highway, the prisoner broke out of the box and jumped off to his freedom. However, his escape didn't last long, as an off-duty officer who was out rabbit hunting nearby spotted and apprehended him shortly after. Right here is the second level of the east side cell blocks, which are the first ones I checked out in this video. As you would expect, the second level of this side is pretty much a mere copy of the ones on the building's west side. Back down on the first level of this building, right beneath the prison's cafeteria, sits a large room divided into multiple holding cells. This area was designed for short-term confinement and was primarily used to manage new arrivals, inmates in transit, or those awaiting disciplinary hearings. Right now, we're heading into the main yard at the center of this prison campus, which is where inmates and Gen Pop would have spent most of their recreational time. This area is completely surrounded by the prison's main buildings and contains an outdoor basketball court and Brushy's old whipping post, which was used as one of the prison's earliest forms of corporal punishment. While early Brushy Mountain is notorious for its brutal living and labor conditions, one of the darkest realities of prison life was the way in which guards enforced discipline. Up until 1965, corporal punishments were routine and were often carried out on the prison's whipping post. During these punishments, inmates were chained to these posts and whipped with a 4-foot leather strap. They were beaten until welts formed across their back, and then beaten again until all those welts split open, all while their screams could be heard all the way into town. However, by the 50s and 60s, the civil rights movement began highlighting racial injustice and institutional brutality, and this included what happened inside prisons. Many of those punished on the whipping post were black inmates, and public scrutiny of racist practices like this increased drastically. Coincidingly, the prison's warden declared the act inhumane and discontinued the whipping post by 1965. The Gymnasium at Brushy Mountain was a central part of inmate life. It was frequently used for boxing matches where prisoners faced off in organized bouts while others gathered to watch and place bets on the fights. Ultimately, these matches provided a controlled outlet for tension in an otherwise very violent environment. For most of its life, Brushy's gym was racially segregated. Black and white inmates were assigned separate spaces while also designated to specific areas of exercise such as weightlifting or basketball games. Additionally, in times of overcrowding, the gym also served as temporary housing, holding dozens of inmates when all the cell blocks were beyond their capacity. Right here's the laundry room, which played a much bigger role in prison life than most realize. In 1928, Brushy Mountain was cited on the federal government's report for its inhumane treatment of its prisoners mining coal. While they were offered showers, they were never provided towels until the prison was pushed to improve its basic living conditions. And this is when things in the laundry room really picked up. Then throughout the 50s and 60s, the laundry room wasn't just busy with inmates' uniforms and towels, but also with clothes from residents of Petros. During this time, residents could drop off their laundry at the prison free of charge, and the inmates handled the rest. Inmates assigned to laundry work operated massive industrial washers and dryers and were also responsible for stitching up torn uniforms. Among the prisoners who worked in laundry was Brushy's most infamous inmate, James Earl Ray. Ray spent most of his sentence running laundry and even kept a small watermelon patch behind the building that he tended to during his downtime. When Brushy opened in 1896, one of its cruelest features was its small underground isolation chamber known as the Hole. Conditions inside the Hole reflected the harsh penal philosophy of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, when isolation and deprivation were viewed as legitimate tools of discipline. Originally, these cells measure only 3 by 8 feet and were designed for complete isolation with a solid metal door that cut off nearly all light and airflow. Confinement lasted anywhere from several days to several months depending on the severity of the offense, and those confined in these walls endured complete darkness with no heat, AC, ventilation, and absolutely no human contact. While inside, inmates were given just 2 buckets, one for their drinking water and the other to serve as their toilet. Initially, there was no bed, no blanket, and no form of comfort beyond the cold floor. Additionally, in the prison's earliest years, the Hole essentially acted as the prison's torture chamber, and the inmates inside were often punished with suspension torture. In these instances, prisoners were tied by their thumbs to pulley cords and hung from the ceiling for up to 30 minutes at a time. Following Brushy's reconstruction in the 1920s, the cells in the Hole were slightly expanded to 4 by 8 feet and were now equipped with a steel bed frame, though still lacking a mattress and a toilet. Despite these changes, the experience inside the Hole remained extremely horrific. The Hole was so dark that many inmates began losing their vision after only a few days underground. Then, when they were finally released, it would often take a few days for their eyesight to fully recover, and during this time, fellow inmates were assigned to guide them around the yard until their vision returned. Ultimately, the physical, mental, and emotional effects of solitary confinement in such dire circumstances became impossible to ignore, and by the late 1950s, Brushy Mountain's administration closed the Hole for good. And this is what led to the construction and opening of the prison's D-block Cellhouse. On the opposite side of the main cell house sits Brushy Mountain's D-Block. Nicknamed the New Hole, this was Brushy's answer to solitary confinement after its original hole beneath the laundry room closed down for good. Constructed in 1957, this maximum security unit served as the prison's isolation quarters for its most violent and uncontrollable inmates. D-Block meant solitary confinement without any privilege or interaction. Inside, there are a total of 32 very crammed single-person cells where inmates would spend 23 hours a day. While inmates were able to turn the light off in their cells, the hallway lights remained on all around the clock, making it extremely difficult for inmates inside to sleep. Many resorted to hanging sheets across their cell bars to minimize the light in any way possible. Additionally, these walls were hardly ever silent. All these inmates could ever hear was banging on cell bars and the screams of others around them. Although it was designed with maximum security measures, D-Block was a constant site of violence and bloodshed. In one instance, 2 prisoners held a guard hostage, threatening him with a gun and knife, while 7 other inmates sawed their way out of their cells. While eventually broken up by other guards, events like this were not uncommon in D-Block. Many of the inmates within D-Block's walls were among those who weren't afraid of attacking a guard at random or what the consequences of their actions might be. Why'd they turn off like that? While Brushy never held sanctioned executions, there was once both an electric chair and a gas chamber in D-Block, though neither of them were ever used or even plugged in at this prison. Eventually, in the 70s, the chair was sent to Nashville where it would conduct over 150 executions, and during this time, D-Block housed inmates who were on death row. They were just sent to Nashville for their actual execution. While in D-Block, inmates were given just 1 hour outside their cell each day, and this time would be spent in a solitary outdoor exercise cage. Each cage consisted of a pull-up bar, dip bar, and at the time weights and a punching bag, and that's really all these inmates were given during their 1 hour being partially outside. Today, these semi-outdoor exercise cells now sit excessively overgrown with vines and weeds slowly reclaiming the entire facility. As we move behind Brushy Mountain's newest maximum security unit, which is currently unavailable for tours, there's a separate outdoor recreational area for inmates who are housed in this building. Today, this recreational area still contains a pull-up bar, dip bar, and a basketball hoop. However, in its time would have also had a punching bag and weight equipment as well. Uniquely, this prison is surrounded by just 3 massive stone walls, with the mountainside then acting as the 4th. The mountain surrounding the prison is so steep and covered in loose falling slate, making it nearly impossible to climb up and escape from. The mountains were more of a prison than the prison itself, and the only way out was through the mouth of the valley and into the town of Petros. However, James Earl Ray, the man convicted for the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., committed himself to escaping Brushy's walls from the day he was brought in. In 1971, Ray made his first escape attempt through the prison steam tunnels, but the heat forced him to turn back. Then, in 1972, Ray was caught sawing into the ceiling in preparation for a second attempt. Then 5 years later, his most famous and nearly successful escape occurred on June 10, 1977, and took place at the back corner of the prison yard near where the wall meets the mountainside. In this event, Ray and 6 other inmates managed to get over this prison wall using a makeshift ladder made out of pipes and then disappeared into the wilderness behind it. Meanwhile, a stage fight broke out in the yard near the guard towers to distract the guards and pull their attention away from the escape. For the next 55 hours, the FBI searched the mountains with helicopters and bloodhounds until each of the inmates, including Ray, were captured and brought back to Brushy. In the 2.5 days he had been on the run, Ray only managed to make it 8 miles from the prison campus and was found completely exhausted hiding in the mountains. Once outside these walls, there was nowhere to go. There aren't any nearby towns on the other side, and the prison sat in the middle of miles and miles of untouched wilderness and endless rolling mountains. Even if an inmate cleared these walls, escape was still a far reach away, and their recapture was almost inevitable. After his recapture, Ray would go on to continue his sentence at Brushy and even make one more unsuccessful escape attempt 2 years later. In this instance, Ray staged his bed with a dummy made using real human hair from the prison's barbershop while he attempted to escape through a fan at the top of the building, where he'd ultimately get caught by Brushy's guards. Then, in 1981, Ray was attacked by 3 other inmates and suffered 22 stab wounds to the face, chest, and arms. Miraculously, he survived the attack but was sent to Nashville in the aftermath and would spend the remainder of his life bouncing to and from Nashville and Brushy, eventually dying of kidney disease at Nashville in 1998. Today, the walls of Brushy Mountain still stand empty as a silent reminder of its violent past filled with human suffering, desperation, and attempted survival. However, these prison walls are now open for tours, and the site even contains a barbecue restaurant and a distillery, so you're able to get a couple shots in before heading into the prison campus and then a meal afterwards. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this adventure. This one has been on my bucket list since I first started exploring and was by far one of the most incredible places I've ever experienced.